Good to see you.
I didn't know your press guys had fashion sense.
No, we don't.
Yeah, boy.
You got a seat at this stage, no?
No, I'm just sitting here watching.
Oh, that's all right.
I get up in the morning and go to one of the old rooms and empty my kids are going. My wife has all my clothes on. I'm ready to go together. That's great. When I first got that, I woke up and some shop. Jackets, pants, t-shirts, real good. I gave my head, he sits out, that's 3 more jackets.
Oh, that's great.
And he made a spreadsheet. This jacket was like grandma's.
Oh,
They were all numbered, and they were, this jacket was pretty cool. I used that for 3 years until I finally figured it out myself.
That's great. Huh. Is he still in business? Or is he still in business?
62 years old, he's had it for 35 years.
Have you ever gone to Jason Owen's shop up in northern Michigan?
It's a little richer than what I go to.
Oh, is it?
He's got a nice,
He does.
real nice clothes.
Yeah, I bought a jacket and a tie.
Every time we get winter, I guess they'll put it in church. Are you coaching him?
Yeah, got little scooters. Got my son. Well, he's, I would like to, he likes, he's good at it. So I think he's the toughest aspect of it. Likes hitting some kids. Smacking each other's face and stuff. So he likes that. Right, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I've got high school doing music this year. Doing Greece.
Oh, I was days ago.
You were?
I was 26. Laughing for it. Let me show you a picture. Let me show you a picture of Joel Leo here in Midsummer Night's Dream.
Was it community theater?
This was community college.
Okay.
Just came up a few minutes ago. Here's me in Greece. That's my wife.
Wow, you look like a great dad.
We weren't married.
Oh, we got Polino here.
Well, I'm showing theater
Hey,
pictures.
key guy of our leadership team. So you can,
No, I'm
it's
serious.
good. It's all good. So you just want to free the 35th. How you guys doing? That's right. You guys excited? How late are you going to work tonight?
Midnight?
What?
Midnight?
Midnight?
Maybe early?
Oh, we get Kyle here. This is exciting,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Big time.
Yeah, that's
This is the big time.
when you don't have the publisher. So, but we got the editor. So it's all.
Second best.
all there. Well, thanks for coming out, and hope you guys have a fun day today. Have a little fun with it, and I asked Senator Runstead and to join me in talking about what we'd like to see in the speech today, and also talking about the failures of the Whitmer administration over the last 6 years and what we've seen out of the Whitmer administration and their failures here in the state. And as we move forward with the Republican House, and that we want to make sure that we fill that 35th Senate seat. The governor still has not called on a special election. There's 270,000 constituents in mid-Michigan that are not represented right now in the state Senate. And I think it's very important that she calls it. You saw this a year and a half ago, when the House went to 54-54, and she called the special election, 3-4 days? And I think MERS did a little sample of saying that it was the average amount of time that she calls it with Democrat seats are only a few days, and the average amount of time when it's a Republican seat, it's many, many more weeks. And now with this seat that could tie the Senate, When she calls the special election, she's delaying, and it's all about politics for this governor. And that's unfortunate that it's all about politics for this governor, because we got elected to solve problems, to solve issues going into this new term. And I think the voters in November spoke pretty loudly that they wanted to see a rebalancing of power instead of this far left socialist agenda that the Democrats have been ramming through over the last 2 years. The last 6 years, what have we seen from this administration? $4.5 billion in new corporate welfare, with very limited number of jobs that have actually been created. I think, 5 or 6% is what they're saying in terms of the actual jobs creation, some bankruptcy of companies, of jobs being awarded. And then you've seen a promise 6 years ago to actually fix the damn roads, and what have we seen? More debt, higher credit card spending, instead of a long-term plan to fix the roads. Fortunately, you see Republicans in the legislature, specifically House Republicans, that have introduced a plan that gets us to nearly $3 billion of new funding without a tax increase in the roads. And it's a serious plan, one that actually shows that we can get there if we don't fund corporate welfare, if we use the surplus to actually fund the roads, and 100% of what you pay at the pump in taxes actually goes to fix our roads and bridges. And then over the last 6 years, you've seen a devastation of our education. Between COVID lockdowns, between repealing accountability measures, and it was 4 years ago, earlier this week, when Governor Whitmer vetoed scholarships, reading scholarships for some of those that are most lacking in reading skills, and the governor vetoed that package of bills. It's high time that we actually put education at the forefront. 3 out of 4 fourth graders, 3 out of 4 eighth graders cannot read at grade level. That's unacceptable. We're bottom 10 state in reading scores. Mississippi actually has higher reading scores than we do. Unfortunately, in December, and this is upon a year ago where you saw the only state in the union to raise the income tax, $800 million income tax increase, and on top of $670 million that's being stolen from the teacher pension fund, and the continuation of that cut. And it's high time that this governor stop stealing money from the teacher pension fund. We need to pay down our long-term debt. That's what we need to do. We're going to continue to be serious about finding solutions to some of these most pressing issues on infrastructure, on roads, on growing our economy. If we do nothing as a state, if we don't shake up the bureaucracy that's here in Lansing, over the next 30 years, we're going to lose another net of 700,000 people in the state. And so we have a question right now, is do we continue to keep the status quo that we've seen under Governor Whitmer, or do we shake things up here in Lansing, and we work to grow the number of jobs, the prosperity, grow the number of people here in the state, and actually get serious with education? Fortunately, in December, Senate and House Republicans, I don't know how many times you spoke during lame duck in December, but same with Senator Bellino, and we had a good crew with Senator Lindsay and McBroom and others that really stepped up, Senator Albert, on making sure that we stopped some of the most egregious efforts in lame duck that they wanted to Venezuela mine Michigan. And fortunately, we stopped so many of those items. I think I had a list of 10 no-go items. 8 of those never got to the governor's desk. And that was something with Senate and House Republicans working together. And you saw that over the last few weeks with Governor Whitmer and Senate Democrats and House Democrats. I don't think they were communicating much at all together, but you saw House and Senate Republicans standing firm, and we got to a lot of fixes done on the sick leave that would have devastated businesses across the state. Still not perfect, but at the end of the day, a lot better deal because we were standing united as Republicans and working to make sure that we got it done, and we delivered for the hardworking taxpayers, hardworking families here in the state of Michigan. So that's kind of my overview of what I wanted to talk about. What I'm hoping for is a real agenda on lowering the cost of living, fixing our roads, improving education, something that actually is a pragmatic way of solving the most pressing problems in the state. And unfortunately, from the social media governor, we'll probably be seeing a bit more fluff and public relations and poll-tested messaging than solving some of those issues. Senator Runstead?
I think you covered all the major talking points. We should probably just throw it open.
So it's
Remind me, does the Senate have any role in advising consent on a Supreme Court justice pick?
It's funny you asked that question. I've introduced that constitutional amendment twice in my time. I actually introduced it in 2011 when we had a Republican governor and a Republican legislature. And I introduced it again, I believe in the Senate back in 19, saying that there should be an advice and consent role for the Senate. But unfortunately, with the majority Senate Democrats that have been in the majority for the last 2 years, can anybody answer how many advice and consent hearings there have been in the Senate? Zero. Goose egg. None. Even when there was a supermajority of Republicans and Governor Snyder is governor, they had advice and consent hearings weekly. And as a former chair of the Advice and Consent Committee, where we actually brought new directors, new folks in, it's an important legislative oversight that we have with these state departments. And unfortunately, over the last 2 years, you've seen nothing done on trying to make sure that there's legislative oversight on these departments. Fortunately, in the House, you've seen with Chair DeBoyer, and you see with subcommittee chairs, was it Kara and Regas, and who are the other ones? Yeah, I think there's 4 subcommittees, right? And I think you're going to see a seriousness in the House on oversight with this administration. And so I continue, my hope is that this governor, instead of a Supreme Court that we've seen over the last few years, create law, make law. You see the chaos that they threw workers in, restaurant workers in over the last few months, that instead of creating law, that they actually read the law for what it is. And so unfortunately the Senate does not have it. And this is also something where having no oversight over the last 2 years of what we've seen, how many people are working in those buildings behind you? How many people actually show up to work in those buildings behind you? And I think it's about time. I mean, even the Democrat mayor of Lansing is finally, I guess he's up for election this year. Maybe there's some pressure there. But the mayor of Lansing's finally said, hey, got to return to work. I think President Trump's showing that at the federal level. And even the Secretary of Treasury opened the door to the Department of Treasury, and he was the lead. You got to lead from the front. And that's why even during COVID, we kept showing up for work because we knew the farmers, the Speedway clerks, folks at Myers, they were all showing up to work also.
Senator Runstead, obviously you've talked to a lot of grassroots Republicans over the last several weeks, months. What was the prominent thing you heard from their take on maybe their perceptions on how the governor's doing?
Well, there's a perception that the governor is very, very anti-business, that there's so many of these legislation pushes that she's had that are anti-business, that she's much more partisan than any other governor probably in Michigan's history. I remember Governor Snyder was very kind of balanced. He felt that he was elected for all the people in Michigan, and the 35th district is a good example that she will put a Democrat in a position so that those people are represented in that district, as should be. That's the job of the governor. The governor's job is not to play a complete partisan hack, and not filling the seat is one of those very, very strong examples of somebody who is absolutely partisan to the point where she believes her job is helping the Democrat Party in a situation where all of these people are disenfranchised. They do not have a voice because she'll put a Democrat right in office and let go 2 years, a whole district, Senate district, not have representation, not have a voice. So that's a lot of what I heard out there.
Senators, Governor Whitmer has expressed that she wants more of a working relationship with Trump this time around. One thing that she's kind of pushed against, though, is his tariff plan, and that's been delayed, and that stands to. But what would you
I'm excited that my constituent, Pete Hoekstra, is going to be the next ambassador to Canada, and so I'm excited that I'll have that personal connection with somebody in the Trump administration that's going to be there in Canada. I also was happy to see that Governor Whitmer attended dinner with President Trump on Saturday. I was kind of sad to see she didn't show up on some of the Sunday morning programs to get asked some questions about what went on. But I've seen this from this governor time and time again over the last few years in leadership, is that she's always willing to engage when she wants something, but if it's actually growing a true relationship, it's harder to see from her. And so that's something we saw with quadrant meetings over the last 2 years. It's whenever she wants to get something done, instead of actually what is that mix of folks from small business owners, workers, people of different faith backgrounds, students, what are their needs that are out there? And too often we've seen it, it's all about public relations and social media stunts. My hope is that she's serious about working with the Trump administration. I would say it would start with actually working with them on ending sanctuary cities here in Michigan, having local police and state police work with federal law enforcement to enforce current laws right now. And you've already seen the effects of this administration's work on border security with a massive cut of the number of illegal crossings that are happening. So my hope with that under former president, under the Biden administration, the only thing we saw go down in price was the price of fentanyl and methamphetamine. My sheriff said that it went down 70-80% under the Biden administration. My hope is that we'll see a lowering of prices on things that the families actually need, something that small businesses need, and let's put Michigan first and America first. But we'll see where it goes. Unfortunately, you see the House Republicans at the federal level actually passing some working family tax cuts with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, some big promises being kept from the Trump administration and going on to the next steps. And so I'm hopeful that Governor Whitmer's serious about working with the Republican House and with Republicans in the Senate and finding a middle ground. And hopefully the last few weeks with our Senate Republican relationship with House Republicans, that we're able to deliver for restaurant workers and deliver to save paid time off for hardworking families here in the state.
Senators, Speaker Hall recently has actually been kind of complimentary of the governor. Has been talking about how she's willing to negotiate on roads and other issues. That doesn't sound like the experience of Senate Republicans. Do you know why that is?
I think it's because he has the gavel and we don't. I think it's just, what does the governor want out of it, out of the relationship? It's unfortunate. But we did see in December, we did see that if we could fix and save 50,000 restaurant jobs, if we could save paid time off and get to a roads deal. I felt we were 60-70% of the way to getting to permanent roads deal, along with fixing, saving 50,000 restaurant jobs and saving paid time off in December. And instead, what you saw from Democrat leadership, especially here in the Senate, and you saw it in the House also, as they decided to go full Venezuela on Michigan. And fortunately, we stood together. Unfortunately, there was one brave Democrat over in the House. Unfortunately, our colleagues over in the Senate used every procedural tactic to slow things down and to, believe me, there was another 70, 80 items that they could have pushed through the Senate back in December. But working together as a team, we stopped a lot of the most egregious items. And so it's unfortunate that over the last few months or last 2 years, they cared more about out-of-state special interests than in-state businesses and state families and state workers. I don't know if you have something to add on that.
I would just say that there's so many things that have occurred under this governor that have been absolutely so destructive to the state of Michigan's business. I think it was the longest, most severe lockdown in 2020 that it decimated small businesses. And the feeling I get talking with all the small businesses in my district is they feel like they're constantly under siege, that the governor's only real concern is the billionaire corporations getting billions of dollars, state dollars, out to these very limited number of corporations that usually don't deliver on the kinds of jobs, rather than reducing regulation on our small businesses, helping our small businesses grow. It's been just a continuous concern about just a very, very small number of businesses. And what's happened here in the state of Michigan, I heard we had one of the biggest small business losses under this governor because of that lockdown that was so severe. So she's got a lot of work to do with small businesses to regain that trust and confidence, and hopefully that's going to be a change this next couple of years.
I know they sent out a teaser on permitting to you. I mean, who knows what the details are? It's usually light on details, heavy on messaging. Let's be honest. Eagle and this Department of Environmental, quality or whatever they call it today, Great Lakes, environmental protection, that these folks have continued to say no to development here in Michigan that will grow jobs and allow for investments. I mean, Senator Bellino's right there on the Ohio border. And you look at that development, or you look at Senator Lindsay right on the Indiana border, or you talk to Senator McBroom on the Wisconsin border, you see a clear difference in development, in jobs, and investment between those two states. I mean, fortunately, we stopped some of these most aggressive, like you look at it, the last 2 years there's been talk of rent control. You say you have a housing crisis and you're telling folks that want to build housing here in the state. I mean, there was hearings on it in the Senate, passed out a committee in the Senate. You're telling these folks that are ready to invest and grow, the number of housing in the state, that you're going to put rent control on it, which means that you're going to do that investment in Toledo or in South Bend or Elkhart instead of you seeing it in Monroe or St. Joe. And this is the Capitol follows the path of least resistance. In the last 6 years under this governor, she continues to put up resistors. 20 miles away from the Indiana border, 4 years ago, there was a development that was announced. Not a dime of state money going into it. It's an aluminum recycler, $140 million investment, 70, 80 new jobs, which may not sound a lot to folks in big urban areas, but in rural areas, that's a lot of jobs. And I get a call 3 months after the groundbreaking saying, we haven't been able to get a permit for the curb cut on an M highway that only gets a few thousand cars a day. So I call the director of the MEDC, and instead of them saying, we're a part of Team Michigan, we're gonna get this done, he goes, that's an MDOT issue. It took me 10 days of calling back and forth with MDOT to get a curb cut in a rural M road for a $140 million investment in the state. I have a boat manufacturer, family owned in Holland, 800 jobs. 70 years the company's been there. Tier yachts, they have a dock on Lake Makatawa that they want to take from 5 feet wide to 10 feet wide, turn into a floating dock. They're 3 years in, $1.3 million in costs of lawsuits suing the state. Believe me, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida would do jumping jacks to get a 800-person manufacturing company like that. 95% of their sales are outside of Michigan. Yet they continue to get from this administration, no. I see the same thing. Senator Bumstead up in Muskegon, hundreds of millions of dollars in new investment ready to go into Muskegon. We had to defund line items for the Eagle budget, staff line items, when we had the majority 3 years ago, for them to get notice to issue permits to put hundreds of millions of dollars into Muskegon. I'm still hearing from developers that Eagle and other departments are continuing to delay, and tell them no. And I hear that with housing around the state. I hear it I have a case out of Pontiac that with Williams International, and everyone got a call back from MEDC. They were ready to put another 500 jobs, $1 billion investment, 1 million new square feet, and instead you're seeing that investment going into Utah right now. Again, these are stories you don't hear about, you don't see, because they're not the ones that are making headlines and that the MEDC wants to talk to you about. But permitting continues to be a real sore point, a real issue. Why are we losing jobs the last few years? Why are we losing people? The last 20-some years, Michigan has flatlined. Indiana's grown by 800,000 people. There's a real difference in policies. Who you elect makes a difference. The people that enact those policies make a difference. And that's something where, if you're serious about it, if you're serious about growing jobs here in the state of Michigan, we got to get serious here in the legislature, and the governor has to get serious about issuing these permits.
And I hope something that gets asked of the governor tonight is her roads plan. She said, we got to fix the damn roads. That's what she ran on. It was her #1 talking point. Well, what has been done? We had $900 billion in one-time funding from the feds. I was certain that the bulk of that was going to be spent on the roads, and I think it was around $200 million. And now she's wanting to increase. She first wanted to do a 45% gas tax. Now she's wanting a boatload of other taxes. There's plenty of money in the budget, and we have a good budget surplus right now. All that money, I mean, if this is her priority, she keeps talking about that, but we don't see any action. All that budget surplus, every dollar should be going to the roads. I was just driving in yesterday, came a different way through Lansing, and I don't know if it's just a couple blocks north. I mean, it was like a third world country. Here it is, Lansing, the capital of the state of Michigan, broken, busted up. I'm driving 10 miles an hour because it's just complete garbage. You can imagine that you have some companies that come to Lansing to find out what is the business climate and have meetings, and they're driving through this third world garbage roads that are all broken and busted up. There's so many issues we have to deal with in terms of trying to recruit business. We have very high energy costs, many other issues, but to have the roads, some of the worst in the nation. You drive into Ohio, as soon as you go across the border, you see perfect roads. Canada, you drive into Canada with much colder weather, and they've got just perfect roads. And you come into Michigan, it's just absolutely broken, busted up roads. This was the #1 thing, and I don't think the media has asked her enough about the solution. This far in, 6 years in, and your #1 priority, and look at the roads, and there doesn't seem to be a priority in what she's proposing, other than more taxes. There's always more taxes. Well, we don't need more taxes. We have plenty of money in the budget if it's the priority.
2 years ago, Senate Republicans offered plenty of amendments to give them the opportunity to actually fund the roads first. $1.5 billion to fix every local critical condition bridge in the state was voted down. $4.5 billion for of the $9 billion surplus to actually put into roads and bridges voted down. And it was time, instead of $600 million and billions of dollars of corporate welfare for some of the most profitable corporations in the world, we've given them chances to put it into local roads and bridges, and they've been voted down. Budgets are about priorities. Hardworking Michiganders are already paying enough. There's money in the budget to take care of this, and fortunately, with winning back the State House last year, I think voters in Michigan clearly spoke in November that it's time to get back to basics instead of this far-left socialist agenda that's out there. So
She gets credit, though, for signing the bills on the tip wage and the paid sick leave changes, doesn't she?
the governor usually does.
Well, you give her credit for that, don't you?
I mean, I'm glad that she did, and I wish, I think we could have, she signed the bills, and I think that's why you probably saw her cancel her appearances on Sunday morning talk shows, is because of the kickback she's getting from the far left of the Democratic Party right now. And so I do appreciate that she actually signed them. Unfortunately, we didn't really see them at all at the negotiating table, and so it was something where you saw House and Senate Republicans working together with Senate Democrats to find a landing spot on both of those issues. So.
You mentioned permitting. It sounds like the governor is going to call for some sort of change in law to speed up permitting. Do you think that's necessary, or can a lot of this be done administratively through the administration? They can speed up things?
The delays we've been seeing over the last 6 years that I didn't hear about 7, 8 years ago were done administratively. And I've been calling on her for years to change things. And this is everything from, it's not just Eagle or Daigle or whatever you call it. It's also, you hear it from liquor control or permits from MDOT, or you go on through any number of these departments, or just responsiveness from MEDC, that at the end of the day, the folks that they put in there are some far-left radical environmentalists that just want to say no development, no growth, no investment. I mean, you look at what they did in December, what the Senate Democrats passed out of this chamber in December. And they have a cute name to it, polluter pays, but what it would actually do would eliminate any brownfield redevelopment in this state, would eliminate any urban redevelopment in this state. And every Senate Democrat voted for that in December. And then they talk about redeveloping our urban areas, and they want to use more taxpayer-funded money to do it. Well, first, it's about the regulations. It's kind of like you go back 13, 14 years ago, Governor Snyder had a thing on economic gardening. How do you create those jobs and that investment here in the state? And what we've seen over the last 2 years is the Democrat trifecta, the Democrat House, Senate, and this governor went ahead and took Roundup to that economic garden. And then they're trying to pay these most profitable businesses hundreds of millions of dollars, write them a check to relocate into that garden. That's wrong. We got to get back to the basics. We got to get back to education, infrastructure, and an investment climate that actually allows for jobs to grow here in the state. And so as I look at the next 2 years, the last 2 years, I continue to call on the governor on permitting reforms and on actually predictability. And it's more than just the governor, it's more than just the administration, it's also locals. 2 weekends ago, there was a paper in Detroit called the Free Press. They had an article that had a person that was bought an old community center that was abandoned. I don't know if you saw it, it was 2 weekends ago. And it was 3-4 years of abandoned building, and the guy wanted to put in 49 market rate apartments. So that means you're not using any of these special capture money or anything like that. And a city that has shrunk by 1.3 million people in the last 60 years. You have neighbors complaining about a zoning change because of the possibility of increased traffic. And I'm told by developers that if you don't have the right lobbyists and the right consultants, it'll take up to 4 years to do an investment in Detroit. But it's not that much better in some of the suburbs. It can take upwards of two years in some of the suburbs that I hear. I don't know why it shouldn't, if you have the plans, if you have the property, if you have the investment, why is it taking more than 3, 4, 5 months?
And if she's talking about reducing permitting and regulation, we're seeing completely the opposite messaging from the Democrats. Just in terms of rentals, there's a real deficit of rental property out there. So the proposal they had is you have very limited look at a criminal background check of your tenant. You have very limited amount you can look at the credit history of your tenant, what their source of income is, and many, many more things that they have proposed in rent control. If you're looking at investing in rental property today, they're going to say Michigan's going to be one of, if not the most constrictive new sets of rules for landlords, and they're just going to say, no, I'm not going to build. And this is their solution to getting more property, is layering on, and I'm not even going through it all. I can't remember how many other bills they have proposed just with rental properties that would just bust the entire industry. People are going to say, I'm out of here. I'm not going to build one more piece of rental property. And they talk a good game. We're for these poor people that can't find the resources to get a place to live, and yet they're creating this snarling red tape that is going to have people not wanting to build a rental property, but even getting out. My father used to have a rental property, and he wanted to know, what is the credit history? What is the background of their references in the previous renters? Even that they don't want you to be able to do. I mean, they're making it so a landlord's got to take a person that normally they would screen out because this person's been evicted, criminal background history, horrible credit, all kinds of things that are just going to make people just want to get out of that. I would like her to address that. If you're talking about just the permitting, it's this regulation that your caucus, that the Republican or the Democrat caucus has been pushing through, that they talk one game, but the legislation is completely the opposite in terms of the results we need in Michigan.
Well, and they say we're in a housing crisis. And all these limiters are going up to say, don't invest, don't grow the amount of housing here in the state. I spoke to Farm Bureau yesterday. There's about 350 farmers, members of Farm Bureau, that were up at the Lansing Center yesterday. And it was supposed to be a quadrant meeting, but it was just the Senate Majority Leader and I guess the House was in session a little later yesterday, passing an accountability and transparency measures out of that chamber. But I asked them, you guys heard about this Green New scam that the Democrats passed a year and a half ago, which would result in the industrialization of 300,000 acres of forest and farmland here in the state. 300,000 acres of forest and farmland in the state. I know the DNR got a lot of arrows in early January because the governor asked them to, look at any farmland, any forest land or any property in the state that they could lease to these solar companies. Rent for ground in Michigan can be as low as $80 an acre for farmland to $220 to $240 an acre if it's good, productive with irrigation. Lease, right? That's annual leases. I had folks telling me that the minimum that these solar companies were offering were $800 a year per acre for 20 to 40-year leases. And some, when they kept saying no and they were close to distribution and transmission lines, we're getting up to $2,000, $2,200 per acre per year for 20 to 40 years. And the hands that went up, a lot of them said they got offers, and I think I only saw one or two hands saying they actually accepted them, because they actually want to farm and produce fiber and food for the people of Michigan. What's the constraint that puts on handing those farms off to the next generation? And what's the constraint that puts on property if you're going to develop it into other means? But this is what this Green New scam means, is that funded by the Biden administration, mandated by the Whitmer administration, it's having real impact to real people out there. It's all funded by taxpayers around the state. So.
Got time for one more?
From you?
No.
Yeah, so.
So I'm gonna get your stances on two things. One, a statewide ban on cell phones in schools, or at least restrictions on cell phones in schools. And secondly, the governor in her budget proposed, or her road is talking about some sort of tax on big tech social media companies maybe for advertising. Just want your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so first off, to be honest, I think a lot of the social media should just be banned for under 16 or 18-year-olds. Like, I think we should follow some of the examples we've seen out of Florida and other states where it's addictive. I mean, I have a 5.5-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, I have a third one on the way. And I mean, it's addictive for adults. You look at, the Reels or TikTok or some of these other ones and you look at your screen time of adults of what it is, it's so much more for young people. Of course, I prefer it to be done locally, but I think with the social media ban, I think you need to do it probably statewide on cell phones. I was chatting with Senator Runstead before, and you had a few thoughts on that before.
Yeah, I've had a lot of interaction with schools in Oakland County, superintendents and teachers, and it's a real problem that you have these students, they could have unless the school is prohibiting it, they'll have these phones, they'll be texting each other, they'll be cheating on tests and all kinds of things. So it's a major distraction for schools. Virtually every single school I talk to would like to not have that student having access to that phone in front of them. If they had they have these bags or these little lockers that they could put them up in. I think that's the solution. Their concern was, they said there will be a handful of parents that will say the child is going to be needing an emergency communication to the parent that there's something's occurred in the school, so they have to have those. And they're like, the teacher's going to have access to their own phone if there's an emergency. That isn't really the case. The student will have access to the phone in the classroom if there was a need, but just getting these away from the students so the students are focusing on learning and not all of these other distractions. Virtually all the schools I talked to would like to do that. And they said, the reason we don't is there's some parents are gonna give us such hell that we, we're terrified to do this. All of them that I've talked to, there could be exceptions, said they would wish the state would do something. And I'm like with the minority leader, believe that it should be best done on a local level, but we're hearing such complaints about being able to do that. So in general, I support not having the student having a phone in front of them. It causes a million problems. But can we come to an agreement on language to prohibit these? I think that's it's just proposed, so we'll have to take a look at that and get a caucus discussion on it.
Anything with road funding, first and foremost, 100% of the taxes collected at the pump need to go to roads and bridges. Period, paragraph. And that's something where I think we can easily get to and easily find a consensus on. Any of these new taxes, whether it's sin taxes or zin taxes or mileage taxes or whatever they may be, at the end of the day, we don't need any new taxes to be able to fix the roads. The budget has grown by over 40% under this governor over the last 6 years. School aid funds grown by over 50% over the last 6 years. There's plenty of money in the budget that's part of it. If it's part of some larger tax reform plan, like what we see with the sales tax or lowering the income tax or lowering property taxes, let's have those discussions. But at the end of the day, what you see from the Democrats, what you see from Governor Whitmer is an insatiable appetite to tax hardworking families and small businesses more and more and more. And you see that from the strangling of regulations. And so Senate Republicans, I think we will continue to stand strong to say we're here to fight for those hardworking families and small business owners, the little guy back home in the district, the folks that were laid off during COVID shutdowns, the folks that had kids that were locked out of their classrooms during the COVID lockdowns, the folks that have been seeing the effects of Bidenflation over the last 4 years, the folks that have seen their young people hurt by methamphetamine and fentanyl from these open borders that the Biden administration has pushed through. These are the folks that we're going to continue to fight for every single day. And so that's something where we're going to go ahead and continue to work, and that's something where I'm hopeful to see some comments by this governor on tonight. So thanks for covering. Appreciate it. Thanks, Midwesterner. You guys showing up quite a bit on the live stream and working on that. Thanks all of you for continuing to cover the Capitol. I know in the media world it continues to be tough out there in terms of the different worlds that are there. So thanks for coming in and covering it. So, and Babe, let's fill the 35th.
Amen, let's fill it.
Free the 35th, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so we'll see if there's I think you'll see at least one senator missing. That's the senator from the 35th district that's not going to show up tonight. Hopefully all of you guys will cover that and ask the governor why there isn't a senator from the 35th district there.
That's right.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. So.